The Inov-8 F-Fly. This shoe has been pretty freaking sick. So 3 reasons why I like this model. Number 1, it is a stellar hybrid shoe. So I think when training shoes are marketed as hybrid options, they tend to be kind of subpar at both running and lifting. They don't typically do the best job in those verticals. And we have to remember when we're talking about hybrid training, on this end of the spectrum we have running, on this end of the spectrum we have lifting. Hybrid shoes exist somewhere in the middle. Now, that said, as you get more specific in any one of those activities, generally hybrid shoes will start to fall short. The F-Fly, I feel like, is a shoe that can honestly kind of hold its own in both activities. For running, this shoe has been comfortable for mileage up to 5 miles. They haven't beat my feet up a ton. And then for lifting, I have squatted up to 325 in these and they felt okay. And then deadlifted up to 455 with the trap bar. Are they gonna be your most stable training shoe? No, but they can hold their own in that vertical, which is something that other hybrid shoes don't necessarily do, like the On Cloud X3, the Noble Drive, etc. So as a true hybrid shoe, this model I think can be a great pick, and that's why I also suggest that if you are into high rock style training and you are somebody who does that type of activity and competition, I feel like the F-Fly could be a really good option for that vertical. The second reason why I like this shoe is it has a wider toe box. So if you have been trying Inov-8 training shoes and you find that the toe boxes typically run too narrow for you, this model has a nice wide anatomical toe box. I have an E-width foot and I have plenty of room in this shoe. Plus the upper volume is a little bit higher in this shoe as well. So you do get a little bit more space, and as this mesh breaks in, it's gonna give you even more volume in the toe box as well. So if you have a wider foot and you do want that hybrid shoe, this can be a great option to look into. This model is kind of like what I would say like a Topo athletic style shoe regarding its overall shape and fit through the toe box, but this model has a slightly higher drop, and I think it's a little bit more sporty and dialed for cross training compared to some of the Topo athletic options out there. The third reason why I like this model is it's super lightweight and breathable. So with this shoe, I have a weight of 8.65 ounces. This is a size 10 model, so that puts this shoe very much on the lighter end of training shoes. And with the breathable mesh upper, my feet have remained relatively cool in this shoe. I've been rocking this shoe for both lifting, running, cross training, some CrossFit, and then also just walking out and about. And I'll rock them with or without socks. My feet remain relatively cool and they don't stink yet, and I credit that to this shoe's breathability. So if you like a lightweight shoe for both your running and lifting needs, that's where I think this model can also excel. But now let's talk about a couple of cons that I have with the F-Fly. So 2 cons or considerations that I have with the F-Fly is number 1, if you have narrow feet, this might not be your best model. Because the upper does have a bit more volume up here in the forefoot and it has a wider toe box, I worry that if you have narrow feet, you might be sliding around in this shoe. I have an E-width foot and I do notice I slide around a little bit in this model if I'm not cranking those laces pretty tight. So definitely food for thought there. If you have a narrow foot, you might want to go with a shoe that's built to be a little bit more narrow so it hugs your foot and gives you more security in that context. The second con or drawback that I have with the shoe is that because we do have this super light mesh upper, we don't have a ton of sidewall support here. So if you are an athlete, for example, that wants a shoe for both court sports or even just doing a lot of cutting and lateral explosive work, you might have a little bit of spillover in this model. Can it work for lateral training? Yes. But if you are getting super specific with your ability to cut and be very agile in like a lateral plane, that would be where I worry that the shoe might fall short for you a little bit and you might have a little bit more spillover. And then as a kind of a 2.5 concern that I have is, despite having rope tech in this shoe, which is basically this lateral and medial sidewall support here to give you additional bite for rope climbs, I would say just be very conscious of the upper construction in this shoe. I don't think it's gonna break down wicked fast for you, but because it is a lighter weight shoe and it's designed for more hybrid style training and this midsole here is a little bit softer, be very conscious of like how you're burning up the shoe's midsole and upper if you're doing a lot of rope climbs in this model. So while they do work for CrossFit exceptionally well, I would just say tread lightly with any high abrasion activities like that in this model. But now let's talk about the performance of the F-Fly. Maui is back once again asking me to tell you to subscribe to the channel. It helps put kibble in his bowl. But that said, back to the review. To chat on the performance of the F-Fly, I'll discuss how this shoe does for lifting, cross-training and CrossFit style training, short runs, and then daily wear. In the context of lifting, this shoe should do a pretty good job for most folks. When I think of hybrid training shoes, I kind of think about them on a different spectrum in the sense of how much stability we can expect from this style of shoe. If we're getting a ton of stability, then it's going to be a very dense shoe and it's not necessarily going to give you that hybrid edge that most folks want with a shoe that can play in both the running and lifting world. So with this shoe, you have to keep that in mind. And now with the loading of this shoe, it's done exceptionally well for most of my free weight workouts. Like I haven't hit a threshold with like dumbbell lunges, split squats, squats and whatnot to where I've really felt unstable in the shoe. I've done walking lunges with 85s in this model and I felt plenty fine. And now with barbell movements and heavier lifts at that, with deadlifts, I think anything over 405 pounds, you will start to notice this midsole compress a little bit. And then for squats, I started to notice that above 315 pounds. But I think for most folks, in the context of how they plan to use them, the stability of this shoe should be plenty fine. This model utilizes Inov-8's PowerFlow Pro midsole, which is a midsole that they use in most of their training shoes, but this midsole in this model is a lot more plush and a little bit less dense. So that said, they will work for lifting, but you got to keep in mind that they're not going to be your best shoe for maxing out. Also, if we're talking about the weightlifting movements, so clean and jerk and snatch, this model might also be a miss just because, again, it's a little bit softer, and with that lack of upper security, you might find that you spill over when bringing the feet out and catching cleans or snatches. When it comes to cross training and CrossFit, the shoe I thought did an exceptional job in both of those verticals. Now, that said, if you plan to use this shoe for classes and front and back work, like sled pushes, sled drags, any form of box jump, broad jump, jump rope, etc., this shoe should work really well. I use this model for CrossFit Open Workout 24.1, and for my dumbbell snatches, and then also burpees, this shoe felt pretty comfortable, and the toe box did a pretty good job with the durability, with the friction on the rubber gym floor. And then just to add to this shoe's, I think, versatility for CrossFit style workouts, I feel like this model would slap for WODs with runs program. So if you do have a WOD coming up and you know for a fact you're doing some light to moderate lifting and then also running, this would be an awesome shoe to throw in your gym bag. Now, my only concern with this model for these two verticals is number one, the long-term durability if you're doing a lot of rope climbs in the shoe in the CrossFit vertical, and then number two, if you're an athlete and you need a shoe with a lot of lateral support for cutting, agility, and any form of lateral explosive work, you might have a bit of spillover in this shoe. But I think for most folks who are going to be using this shoe for some lateral stuff here and there, maybe a rope climb here and there, this shoe should work plenty fine. When it comes to running, I have liked this shoe. Honestly, I was not expecting this shoe to be as comfortable as it was, but even on my runs where I had a slower stride and a little bit more heel strike, the beveled heel back here and how it kind of pops out, I think it helped dissipate some of that force and impact. And I think you get enough responsiveness and comfort in this shoe for different running styles and stride rates. And also, I think if you're somebody that likes a little bit more of a minimalist shoe for running and you like shoes that are more flexible and more articulative, and you generally vibe with Inov-8 shoes, I think the shoe is going to feel right at home for you. When it comes to walking and just daily wear, I have also really liked this shoe. So with this shoe, when I wear it for walking, what I'll do is I'll actually wear it a little bit looser like this, so I can just slide them on and off. The breathability is awesome, the comfort is great, and also I like that they use the boomerang footbed in the shoe. This bumpier insole is awesome, and I typically really resonate with it when I'm going barefoot. I like the feel on my feet. I know that might be a little bit weird, but I do like that bumpier texture in the shoe because I think it helps add to this model's overall comfort for walking and standing for longer periods of time. But all that said, and wrapping up this section, I feel like the F-Fly has done an exceptional job in all of my tests. Honestly, I feel like Inov-8 came out swinging with this shoe, and I think that this is going to be a very strong hybrid shoe over the next few years. When it comes to the price of the F-Fly, you can expect to pay $130. Personally, I feel like that price point is really fair for this shoe. And more specifically, I feel like if you have a training shoe for your heavier lifting sessions and you keep this on the side for cross training and workouts where you plan to do some interval runs and running, you have a really great lineup of shoes right there. And I feel like for $130, this model is worth it, especially if you plan to rotate them in with other shoes. All right, so now to the question, who should buy the Inov-8 F-Fly? Number one, if you need a true hybrid shoe, or if you're into high rocks and high rock style training, I think this shoe will slap. I would highly suggest looking into them. Number two, if you have a wider foot anatomy and you want that shoe for doing a little bit of everything, this can be a good wide foot friendly training shoe to explore. Number three, if you like shoes that have a lot of flexibility and articulation and they're super lightweight, this model will also resonate, I think, for your training acid needs with your shoes. Now, who shouldn't buy this shoe? Number one, if you have narrow feet, I would say buy through Inov-8 or Amazon with this model because that way you can easily return them just in the event they don't align with your foot anatomy. And then number two, if you need a shoe exclusively for heavy lifting, CrossFit, or just running, you might want to find a shoe that's a little bit more specific. Again, with hybrid shoes, we have to remember that the shoe is going to always have some level of drop off when it comes to how specific we're getting with our training in the sense of responsiveness and plushness for running and then stability for lifting. So when it comes to the sizing and fit in the Inov-8 F-Fly, I think most lifters and athletes should be safe going true to size in this shoe. Now, I wear a size 10 in all of my training shoes. I have an E-width foot and what I would call like a normal arch and volume to my foot. This model fits my foot really well. Now, there are a couple of exceptions here that I think you should keep in mind. Number one, narrow feet. You might find that the shoe just doesn't have enough upper security for you, so keep that in mind once again before you buy. And then if you have an exceptionally wide foot and you find that you're constantly hitting the end of your toe boxes of your normal shoes, go up a half size in the shoe, play it safe, and I think you should have plenty of room in this model. All right, so when it comes to the weight, heel, toe drop, and insole in the F-Fly, for my size 10 shoe here, we have a weight of 8.7 ounces. The heel to toe drop in this shoe is 4 millimeters, and this model does have a removable insole, and Inov-8 has used their boomerang footbed in this shoe. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the F-Fly. Up here on the toe box, we have an extended outsole layer that wraps up. There's a light internal toe guard here around the toe box. It's not very rigid once again, and that's why you can have a little bit less security in this shoe's forefoot. Looking at the upper in this model, we have a mesh upper that runs throughout the entirety of this shoe. They do have some 3D print overlays here around the toe box here and then around the midfoot. That does give you a little bit of additional support and durability. The heel itself isn't super rigid, but there is an internal cut back here, so it should provide you with plenty of security, I think, for the training ass you'll probably be putting into the shoe. There are 5 eyelets that run up in this model with the 6 back here for lace lock. The tongue itself does have a loop and it is gusseted, so I don't think tongue security is going to be an issue in this model for most, and the tongue itself is built with a wider mesh material. Looking at the midsole in this shoe, we have the PowerFlow Pro midsole that runs throughout the entirety of this model. Back here in the heel, it is a little bit more flared out, and I like this feature because I feel like it helps add to the platform of this model for lifting and cross training. The midsole depth of this shoe is 10 millimeters back here in the heel and then 6 up here in the forefoot, and then you also have that rope tech here on the lateral and medial side, and that takes me into the outsole of this shoe. You have a full rubber outsole, you have that MetaFlex up here in the forefoot, you have that typical dynamic fascia band that Inov-8 uses in all of their models, and you do have a slightly more aggressive midfoot here, but honestly, because this shoe isn't super rigid regarding its upper, I don't think that's going to be a massive issue. Now, if you have exceptionally flat feet, you might want to consider that with this shoe, but again, I don't think that's going to be an issue for most folks. The lug depth on this shoe's outsole is 2.5 millimeters. And then once again, this model does have the boomerang footbed in it from Inov-8. If you have additional questions on the shoe's construction, drop a comment down below. All right, guys, that's my review of the Inov-8 F-Fly. Honestly, I have been very surprised and impressed with the shoe. I think if you want that shoe for hybrid training and you like more minimalist feeling shoes at that, this model will resonate really well for you. If you have additional questions on the F-Fly, drop a comment down below. Also check out my full review that is linked down below in the description and in the first comment, or you can reach out to me on Instagram if you are still unsure if you should buy the shoe or not, and if it works well for your needs, I will answer whatever you have. But as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.